Well, it is time for another update video. Sorry it has been so long. There is a lot that's been going on and I would love to tell you about it. So I thought I'd give you a different angle of the office, or really not my office, the studio. So that building is where we have had office space before, and it's where our studio is. Those are the doors that I walk through. But I figured I would go outside this time. I tried to record this update video in Oregon during a recent Oregon trip that I can't wait to tell you about in a couple minutes. And then the one afternoon that I had to try to film this, I had blocked it out on my calendar. I spent all this time trying to find like a trail or something to go on, or maybe a waterfall to check out. And then it started raining, like pouring, as soon as I got all the camera gear put together. So that didn't happen. So we're here instead, but this is a different spot. So we're just gonna hang out here and I'm gonna tell you about what's going on. Let me tell you about the Oregon trip first. So, as you know, if you've been paying attention to what's going on, you know that COVID affected us in multiple ways last year and kind of continues to affect us. And one of the major ways, and maybe the most obvious ways, is it affected our speaking, like obviously. I did the DC and Ireland trip in the very beginning of 2020, and then no trips until September. In September, I went to Florida and spoke at the CareNet conference, and that was really great. And then it was nothing until this Oregon trip that happened last month, which was fantastic. And what we got to do was Jacob and I got to go and do 2 sidewalk counseling seminars. So we actually built an entirely new seminar, a full day sidewalk counseling seminar based on some of the content that's in the course, the sidewalk counseling masterclass, as well as a new presentation that we wrote called Don't Be Weird on the Sidewalk, which is kind of a fun way to build a lot of foundation early in the seminar about what are our values, what are the things that we care about, what are the things that we want people to understand about kind of our core values and the ways that we think about sidewalk counseling, while also taking a look at, you know, just some of the sometimes very, very odd things that some people who are very well-meaning end up doing while sidewalk counseling. And then just add some role play and a lot of Q&A, and we had a really great seminar. So Oregon Right to Life had us come out and we did 2 of those seminars in different places in Oregon. I also did a half a day sort of a workshop for the Oregon Right to Life staff, which is just one of my favorite pro-life groups to ever work with. I think they've hired me more times to speak than any other. Yeah, it has to be, because it's got to be. This has to be an event like 6 or 7 or something like that I've done with them, and just love their team. And so I got to kind of go to their office and just talk about writing, about doing pro-life writing and professionalism and SEO, just like all these different things that we're trying to learn, or we have learned and are continuing to learn. So I had to put together the content for that as well. And then I did a relational apologetics sermon 3 times at this church, this really cool church. That was one of the most rewarding parts of the trip, honestly, because like I don't preach at churches real often, but we recorded this talk at my church a couple of years ago, and and they filmed it really, really nicely. And so this church that was already liked what I do, and they're kind of apologetics oriented as a church, and one of the parishioners has a radio show that I've been on a couple of times. They had always kind of talked about, like, it'd be really great if we could get you here in person. And so when I reached out and said, hey, I could literally fly home one day later and speak at your church, you know, this particular weekend if that works. And so the pastor got in touch with me and said, well, what would you like to speak on? I said, why don't you watch this video of this talk I gave. This is kind of what I like to do at churches if I get a Sunday morning. And so he watched it and he got back to me and with just the best answer. It was, you know, just kind of like, this is perfect. Don't change a thing. Love it. Love the length even. You know, this really fits in with stuff that we've been wanting to talk about and would love to have you come and do it, which was great because I didn't have a whole lot of time to come up with anything else anyway. So it was really great that this worked out. And when you do a talk like this, you know, it's kind of the big prayer is that it's actually going to change people, that it's going to really affect people. You don't want it just to be like, oh, that was a nice talk, you know, move on. And so all the, you know, I prayed a lot with the pastor and with the prayer team at the church. That was kind of a lot of what, especially my prayers were directed toward. And And this was a really great experience of getting to see that happen. I talked to at least 5 people after the various services who were like, I'm changing my wife now. Like, this has been a really big deal for me. And I'll tell you one of the stories. Obviously, I won't say her name, but kind of an older mom came up to me and said, my son has kind of left the church, and he's going out with this girl that I don't approve. She's pro-choice, she's an atheist, she's a feminist. And she said, I've not been connecting with her because I don't want to encourage that relationship, But I feel really differently now having heard your talk, and so I'm going to reach out to her today, and I'm going to invite her to take a walk with me this week so I can start trying to build that relationship. So that was really, really cool. So if you're a pastor and you ever want me to come and do this talk, consistently I get that reaction. My church, there's still people talking about that talk, even though it's been years. But sometimes people talk as if it was a lot more recent than that, like it's really in their memory. And so I don't think of myself as a preacher. I don't think of this really as a sermon. I think I've got the gift of teaching, not preaching, which is a different thing and something that I have great amount of respect for. But I'm hoping to be able to share this talk that kind of goes through some different stories of relational apologetics and some of the reasons why I think people should do it, as well as some practical tips that I've learned through the course of doing relational apologetics, which is cultivating authentic friendships with people, where in that context you can talk about difficult subjects like abortion. And if you're interested in watching that, I'll drop a link down in the description to the video that my church had filmed of me giving that. And I just kind of hope that this will result in me sharing that at more churches. Kind of, maybe every time I do a trip, maybe I can try to figure out a way to, get in touch with some church in the area that'll let me share this. So the Oregon trip was amazing. The only thing I didn't get to do was record this update video there. I wanted to, but it was a really, really busy 5 days, and it's been really busy since. That trip sort of set me behind a bit. Like, I'd finally gotten to this point, we're producing a lot of YouTube videos and podcasts and articles. It's kind of like, it's kind of like the baseline. That's what's always going on here. Is no matter what is going on, no matter whether we are speaking or working on kind of big behind the scenes projects that will take more time, we are always in that mode of we're going to be publishing, 2 articles a month, 2 podcasts a month, and 2 YouTube videos a month is sort of the schedule that we're on. Every once in a while we might miss a week or something like that if things have gotten really crazy, but we're pretty good at staying consistent with that now. And I had finally gotten to this point where I was like way ahead, we've got this massive spreadsheet where we kind of keep track of all the different things and in order and what steps they're all in towards, and the kind of the chain, the workflow, and trying to make sure that we're getting everything done on time. And I finally at this place where it's like I've got the next maybe month worth of videos and podcasts basically ready to go. And then the Oregon trip just really put me behind. I'm so glad I did it. It was one of my favorite trips that I've done in years, but it took like a month to prepare functionally 2 brand new seminars from scratch. And Jacob and I rehearsed a lot, trying to get ready for it. And so I had a lot of catching up to do. And I've sort of been playing catch up since. Like, we've been getting everything out on time, but it's been hard to kind of get back to that place where it's like I've got all these different things ahead. So I'm sort of in the process of trying to get back to that place that I was. There's been a lot of producing stuff. I've been filming a lot. I've filmed the next 5 podcasts that are going to go out, are already filmed and are just in various stages of editing. I've filmed the next couple of YouTube videos that we're going to be putting out, and I also recently filmed a full virtual speech for CareNet. So CareNet has invited me to speak at their next conference. This will be my 3rd year in a row speaking at CareNet, which has always just been a great conference to be at. I've grown to really like a lot of people on their team, and I seem to have been helpful to their people at the conference who've come to my apologetics talks. And so they have a virtual conference that they run simultaneously. And last time they had kind of all the speakers ahead of time sort of get on Zoom and record these Zoom calls. They're working with a company that I think is like running like 30 of these simultaneously. Like it's gonna like get in your room, they'll be like, okay, cool, you good to go? Okay, hit record, moving on to the next one. So you're just like speaking to nobody, to just you. I find it hard to be like super dynamic and act like there's a lot of people watch or whatever in that kind of context. And so this year when they reached out and said, hey, it's time to book when we're gonna film your virtual thing, I just kind of said like, can I just record it myself? Like, I have a studio, we have all the stuff, like I could easily I can make it look so much better than what we did last year. And their reaction was great. They're like, oh, that would be wonderful. We wish that everyone could do that, but most people don't have a video studio, that kind of thing. And so I just filmed that. We need to still edit that. So there's been a lot of video and podcast production, a lot of editing kind of going on. It's just a lot of just getting the work done, getting stuff out there. And I'm really proud of what we've been making. I think the best video that we've made recently, if you haven't seen our video on the Ravi Zacharias issue, I'd really encourage you to check that out. I was not planning on making a Ravi Zacharias video. I know obviously a lot of people have talked about that scandal, and I've certainly read all of the reports and what RZIM has said and what other people have said, and I was affected. I was personally affected, as so many people were who were fans of Ravi Zacharias, to learn just really, really distressing things that were going on in his life that no one seemed to know about. But I wasn't planning on making a video about it. And then it was Andrew who had this idea. And when he first said we should make a Ravi Zacharias video, I kind of threw out this idea like, well, here's an angle that we could take. And he was like, well, I had this idea, and he had this idea for a different angle that was just so much better than my idea was. So we went with his. It was a really, really helpful, very, I think, unique kind of a take on the situation. And so Andrew, we really tag teamed that script. Like Andrew wrote sort of everything except the introduction. I wrote like 5 or 6 paragraphs or something of like an introduction. It was very, very personal. So that was all me, and then Andrew wrote the more substantive content, and then we edited each other's sides. It was a really great Andrew moment. Like it was Andrew and I have been working together so well. A lot of people don't think about him because he's so behind the scenes. He is so in the areas of he's writing for us, whether it's articles or scripts, or he's editing other people's articles that they're writing for our blog, or he's doing behind the scenes projects like working on the next part of the course that we're going to rework. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And he's been also helping in the area of SEO, which I should talk about that too. Like we're just continuing to, I don't need to talk about it. I'll say like we're trying to continue to maximize the impact of our previous work. For example, we've learned that YouTube is suggesting our videos to people sometimes, but they're not getting clicked on a whole lot, probably because our titles and or thumbnails are not very YouTube user friendly. So we're learning a lot and thinking about how to improve those things, because like most of the work goes in like this. It's sitting down, it's setting up the equipment, it's making the thing, and then after I'm done with this, I'm going to dump this footage on my computer and I'm going to process the audio and try to make it sound as good as I can, and I'm going to color this footage and try to make it at least look accurate and edit it together. Like that's going to take several hours. And so why not spend, some more time trying to, create thumbnails and titles that will help people to decide to actually click on the video and experience it. And so we're even kind of going backwards on some videos, kind of like, how can we improve this so that we can have a lot more people discover the content that we've worked really hard on in the last several years of creating and putting out there. So anyway, so Andrew does like all of those things, and he's such an important part of our team. But this was a moment that I was particularly proud of him, because the idea that he had for this video I thought was so good. And his execution of the script was so good. And he made it really easy for me to just go into the studio and then film this thing that like the next day, basically. It was just kind of like, let's rush, let's try to get this done as soon as we can. And that has been one of our best performing videos that we've made in a long time. I know it's past 1,000 views now, which is good for us. It's, obviously we want to keep on growing and and getting a lot more people seeing our stuff, but the video's done very, very well. And the people who've watched it have generally been very encouraging. On Facebook, it's been a kind of a different thing. On Facebook, we've gotten a lot of comments from people that are like, how dare you attack this wonderful Christian man, like that kind of thing. So there's still some people that are having a hard time, I think, reconciling or wrapping their head around, what has come out. But I think a lot of people were helped by our perspective, and Andrew's really to thank for that. There is another really cool Andrew moment recently where I've recently filmed a video on the Pastor Pledge, which is this big article that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's a very important kind of, it's kind of near and dear to my heart, kind of a topic that I talk about a lot when I travel, or if I'm ever talking to clergy. Like, you better believe it's just a matter of time before I'm going to bring this idea out to them, because I want to spread it around. And Andrew realized we've never done a YouTube video on this. Like, I've put out on a podcast, and I'll link to this, but I've put out like a talk that I gave at a seminary, at a Lutheran seminary, kind of explaining the idea. And of course, we have this article on it, but we've never made a video about it. And so Andrew did the hard work of like this day that I was going to go and film this long CareNet speech, this virtual speech. He was working while I was filming on trying to create the script for that. And we basically take an article that's, I don't know, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 words and pare it down to a more YouTube friendly length. And he was expecting maybe I would, finish filming the CareNet thing and then go and make some little changes or touch-ups or whatever, and then film it. I didn't have time for that. I had like a 30-minute window between getting the CareNet thing done and having to leave. Like, my wife had a babysitting gig that night. Like, I can't just like hang out and work late this day. And so I just copied and pasted the script that he sent me right into the teleprompter, and I just filmed it, which was not what Andrew was expecting me to do. But it was a really fun experience for me, because I literally read this script for the first time to this camera. And the substance of the video is still mine. Like, most of the words in it, as far as I can tell, are still mine. But there were these new lines that I'd never seen before that Andrew had added that were so good. And so I'm getting to experience. You might actually, if you look really carefully, you might actually be able to see me just smile, just subtly, just like as I'm kind of reading his words for the first time, but I'm reading them out loud. It's just like, internally, I'm like, that's really good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just really, really great. So, want to brag on Andrew. Let me also brag on our other staff while I'm at it, because our staff are so amazing. So Jen has been incredible lately. She has been making everything work so well. And she basically keeps on adding to her job. It's this incredible thing. A couple of years ago, we added HR to her job. I got her, she went and got trained as an HR person. So she handles a lot more of kind of that side of ERI now for us. And then lately, she's been learning web design, because we've had issues with websites and things, and a lot of times we've had to contract out for that, but she's been learning a lot of it herself, and now is able to do it herself. And so she just keeps on adding new skills, and is yet so happy to do whatever needs to get done, no matter how grunty the work is. She is so happy to do it, is so incredible at it, and so efficient. I don't know how she gets so much done so effectively, working multiple jobs, now going to school for web design too at the same time. Like, she is just incredible. And Jacob has just really landed in this wonderful place at ERI, where most of his time now is just spent coaching people who've gone through the Sidewalk Counseling Masterclass. Like, this is what Jacob is best at. He's best at either sidewalk counseling or speaking about sidewalk counseling, or one-on-one on the phone or on Zoom, talking to people about the problems that they're having on the sidewalk. And sometimes it's not even problem solving. It is sometimes, but sometimes it's just encouragement. It's just like, just having that person be like, hey, it's okay, get back on that horse or whatever. And Jacob is just so good at that. And so Jacob's been in this really good place of just spending a lot of his time just consulting with different sidewalk counselors, which is something we've been wanting to do more anyway. And so we're getting to see the fruits of that. We're getting to see people just get back out on the sidewalk a lot more than they used to be, because they went through this course and because of Jacob's help. So we have a really fantastic team. And Emily is almost here. She's 98% support raised. She's basically support raised. She's finishing her last semester student teaching now, and then she comes on full time, like mid-June. So that's going to be fantastic. I'm going to be training her to speak. She's going to be taking on a lot of the domestic speaking trips down the road, because I'm hoping to get back to doing more international speaking. Once again, things with COVID have kind of gotten better, but at some point, that'll be, I think, the way things look, is I will do more international speaking and then probably more time here in the office until we have more staff producing content, producing videos, producing podcasts, while Emily will take on, at least I would imagine, more than half of the domestic, like shorter speaking trips, so that I can stay focused on here, because she won't live here in North Carolina. So she can't really help with the editing and stuff. We'll fly her in pretty often, like maybe once every month or two, to film a bunch of videos and a bunch of podcasts in like 1 or 2 crazy days. Like, we'll do that. But she won't be able to take on like some of the editing off my plate. And so it'll be better to get her out and about. And also just, I shouldn't be the only apologetic speaker here. And so Emily and I will be doing multiple seminars together this year that are already getting scheduled now, and I'll just be working with her on speaker training, and of course we'll be making a lot of videos and podcasts with her. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait for her to kind of officially be on the team. Okay, what else have I not told you about yet? I guess I'll just tell you about kind of 2 of the projects that have been going on behind the scenes that are going to be coming out soon. We've got like some kind of big down the road projects that we are working that I'm not going to tell you about yet, but that will be coming later. But kind of 2 cool things have been going on behind the scenes. One, we are getting ready to reshoot the bodily rights module of the Equip for Life course. Again, we decided, I think it was like last year, maybe a year and a half ago, especially after a really important conversation with a very young donor that we have, who just helpfully reminded me, very respectfully, but reminded me that the Equip for Life course is a really special thing. And for the student clubs that have used it, it has really dramatically changed their effectiveness on campuses. And he said, like, anything you can be doing to develop that course or to get more people watching it seems like one of the most important things you could do at ERI. And it's like, you know what? I think he's right about that. And so, whereas for a little while I was just kind of thinking of that as a past project that is, you know, just first kind of like moving on. We're only gonna like put stuff on YouTube now. There is a lot that we have learned, and that it has been 5 years since we filmed the first iteration of the course, and we've learned a lot in the last 5 years. That's what we do at ERI, right? We go out, we have conversations, we think about the things that are going on, and think about psychology and philosophy, and try to figure out how to be most effective. And we've learned a lot of things. And so last year, we completely reworked the equal rights argument module, arguably the most important module in the whole course. Different people would debate that. For some people, the first 2 modules, on habits of highly ineffective pro-lifers and practical dialogue tips, for them, those have been the most important modules. But if it's apologetics oriented, equal rights argument is the most important, because it changes so many minds once you nail this argument. And we had come up with this new way of teaching it, and we completely re-scripted and refilmed that. And so apologetics wise, it was really obvious to me that the next most important module to take on and rework is the one on bodily rights arguments. This is such an important part of the abortion debate. It's a part of the abortion debate that pro-lifers get wrong a lot, like unintentionally. Like they know how to respond to like the simple version of this, but then there are kind of more advanced, nuanced versions that can stump a lot of pro-lifers. And if you've got your moment, like you don't want to waste your moment. We've learned a lot in the last 5 years about the kind of most effective talking points and arguments when it comes to bodily rights arguments. So Andrew has been working a lot behind the scenes on re-scripting most of that. I'm actually going to have Steve Wagner come down, and he's going to film a lesson in it based on a really important article that he wrote that we've republished at the ERI blog with his permission. I'll link to that in the description. So if you want to peek at like one of the things that's going to be in the course, that kind of area of common ground on bodily autonomy is really critical, and one that I don't hear other pro-life people talking about basically ever, and just really, really important. And hopefully we'll record some role-play dialogues too. And that's something that's going on behind the scenes. It's still fairly early in development. Andrew's written a bunch of the scripts, and I haven't even had time to go and do my first editing passes on them, but I'm getting to that point where that kind of comes to the top of the priority list. And then the other big project is the Equip for Life course workbook. So if you have the Equip for Life course, a lot of you know there's like a PDF you can download for each module that, like if you're a group leader, if you're leading a group through the course, it's kind of especially made for them. There are some different role play dialogues in there. There's discussion questions and things like that. And I'll never forget when we first made the course. So it's 2016. We've been working so hard. I was working 16-hour days for a little while there, trying to just get all of the editing done. We had this goal of when we were going to put it out. So we're trying to make that. So I had Tim do some of the early editing, like he kind of cut like most of the mistakes, and then the more nuanced editing and the slides and anything else, that was me. And then I was also building the website. And so what I had Tim doing during that part was I had him writing the workbook. And I remember the week before we launched, we had a couple of people, like, we had a brand consultant and a couple of other people who we really respected take kind of a preview look at the course. And I remember one of them said, like, I really like the videos and I like the look of the website, but this workbook, like, it kind of looks like you just threw together a Microsoft Word template and called it a day. And I'm like, guilty! That's exactly what I did. I made this template, I gave it to Tim and said, do your thing. I can't be involved in this part of the process. I just need you to make the workbook, and I'm going to finish all the videos and stuff. And so, we didn't have money at the time for a graphic designer to make it look prettier. So it was kind of like one day down the road, we'll make it look prettier. But there's also like a lot of content that could still get added to it. And so I want to give a big shout out to an amazing volunteer. Easily, if not our hardest working volunteer, easily in the top 2. It's kind of hard between him and the guy who helped us film and then like edited the Sidewalk Counseling Masterclass. Those are like by far the 2 hardest working volunteers we've ever had. And so that volunteer is Jim Burke. And he has done a lot of stuff for us in the past, but for months and months now, he's been working on kind of creating almost basically from scratch a much better, fuller, more comprehensive workbook for the Equip for Life course that also will look better. More based on what we did with the Sidewalk Counseling Masterclass, where we've got like all these lists of like all these tips and a lot of, just a lot more than what we had in the original workbook. And so he and Andrew have done most of the work on that, and Jim really has done most of the work on it. Jim is probably, I don't think this is an exaggeration, he has to have put at least 50 or 100 hours into this thing. Maybe more at this point. And Andrew's certainly put in a lot of time. I've put in less, but I've put in a decent amount of hours on it too. We've all just been editing it together. And it is, as of this filming, 99% done. Like basically we've gone through all of the changes and Jim just has to go through the PDF he's making just to make sure that all the content's been moved over and that all the formatting is consistent and all of that. And then we're gonna be publishing this thing. So if you are a member of the Equip for Life course, really cool things coming out soon for you. And if you don't have the Equip for Life course, I would love for you to get it. It is a really, really helpful course on dialogue tips and pro-life apologetics. And we just are constantly getting really, really great comments from people who've taken it. So I would encourage you to check that out. I'm going to wrap it up there. This has been long. This has been longer than, these are always kind of long. If you want the behind the scenes, if you really want to know what's going on, that's not like published content, kind of a more pulling back the curtain, then this is for you. If you're one of our donors, I really, really appreciate you for making our work possible. There's a lot of fantastic things going on. There's even more things going on behind the scenes that I'm not getting into right now, but I will get into later. And I'm just really proud of everything that is going on. Even though we are very understaffed as an organization, and we could certainly use more funding. Is that hinty enough? That doesn't feel very subtle. I'm not trying to be manipulative. Let's just say that. Like we could definitely. Okay, I need to be okay with just saying this because I've heard that from a lot of people. We could use more money. We are slowed down by the fact that we don't have more donations coming in, but we have enough that we've been able to kind of keep the work going at its current pace, but not a ton of wiggle room. And so if you've been really helped by our work and maybe you haven't given yet and you haven't supported us yet in that way, perhaps consider seeing if is that something that you could do. Maybe if you're in a better place now than you were last year, hopefully everyone's kind of back to work and and life is getting closer to back to normal, I'll just say we could use the help. Okay, moving on. Even though we are understaffed, our team is killing it. We're doing really, really good, and it's a really healthy work environment. We meet basically every morning for a little while and talk about, what we worked on yesterday and what we're working on today, and problem solve together, and our team just loves working together, and I'm really glad for that. And it's important work, and it's work that you are making possible. So thank you for that. Thank you for caring enough about the pro-life movement and the work that we all have to do to want to make it better, to make it more effective, to help us change more minds, to help us save more lives. We're playing a really important role in that. And I'm grateful to you. Thanks.